Let's see. So Trey Lance so far, he has had a little bit. I know it's only been around for a couple of years, but he's had a little bit of an injury history. Coming into the league, he fractured his finger. I believe that was in August. Then he ended up taking over for Jimmy Garoppolo for a game, and ended up getting a knee sprain. That was in October. And then week 2 of this past season, 2022, when he was given the full-time starting position, he did have his unfortunate ankle injury. So in about, I think we pulled the numbers up a couple days ago, and I think it's in 8 games he's played in, 4 starts. He's had 3 injuries.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know we haven't seen a whole lot of tape on him to make a fair assessment of who he is as a player, like what his strengths and weaknesses are necessarily. We know he has a big arm, but like how does that fit into the NFL? Do you think like his injury history is the only actual red flag we can look at him for right now? Or do you still think it's fair to make other assumptions based on the few games he's played into?
I think it's way too early to base anything off the games that he played in. I think the number of games he played in is like 3.5 or something like that. Like you said, like 4 games. So, yeah, I mean, like he hasn't been on the field enough. Like for me personally, like I can't base anything of what he showed me yet on the 3.5, 4 games that he has played.
So do you think it's fair to criticize him then on the injury specifically? Or is that just an unfortunate kind of a thing?
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, no one has any control or power if they get hurt or not. Kind of just like happens. I would say this is kind of like a random aside. I mean, like he's had one of the toughest starts to a career that I can remember of like recent like his history. You know what I mean? Like again, high profile draft pick, played 3 games in over course of like 2 seasons.
Yeah, so he's technically played in 8 because there's a little bit at the beginning of the 2021 season where the Niners were using like a special package for him, like it's a goal line kind of a thing.
Yeah,
and I think he's had 4 starts.
So like 4 how many meaningful snaps? I know you mentioned he played in 8 games with like a certain package, right? So
yeah,
I mean, how many games did he actually play like over half the amount of snaps for like on like offense? Probably 3, maybe.
There was the game against Arizona where he got the knee sprain. There's a game against the Houston Texans that was both in 2021. In 2022, he played week 1 against your Bears in the monsoon. Mm-hmm. So again, it's hard to call that meaningful snaps. And then he got hurt halfway through or towards the end of the first quarter, I believe, in week 2 versus Seattle of the 2022 season.
Yeah. So you factor in like all the injuries he got, not be able to get on field, and then you add in the other factor of like Brock Purdy was going off. So now it looks like he lost his starting job. So he got hurt, can't stay on the field. A guy that they drafted is now starting quarterback. I can't really picture a harder start to a career than he has had so far, for sure.
I mean, and maybe that's just the thing. Maybe his body just isn't, made to stand withhold at the NFL level. Maybe, because he did come from a lower D1 school in North Dakota State, and obviously guys aren't flying around and hitting as hard as they do in the NFL. Maybe his body just really isn't up for that kind of, again, which is unfortunate, but it is made not able to take that kind of punishment. From the evidence we have, he's only started 4 games and he's got hurt in 3 of them. I mean, he could have taken over in 2021 when Jimmy Garoppolo got hurt, because at that point the season wasn't going well. And he stepped in for him for Arizona. And I think a few fans, I think myself included, were thinking, okay, maybe if he does well, maybe they just turn away from Jimmy, indefinitely and just stick with Lance. He got hurt, didn't look great. So they had to go back to an injured Jimmy anyway. Then he came in later for the Houston game. He looked okay, but again, Houston was an awful team at the time, but he did look okay. And then this past year, again, you get the monsoon, and then you get Seattle where he's hurt again. So I feel like that's the only fair criticism to look at, especially if the 49ers, because that's what they cited as one of the reasons they're moving, or the main reason they're moving on from Jimmy Garoppolo was the injury history. They got tired of every year you roll out and you think, well, is my quarterback going to make it through this entire season? Yeah. But we kind of see the same thing with Trey Lance again. And even if you want to compare Trey Lance to Brock Purdy here, Brock Purdy has made it through 8 or 9 games and only suffered 1 injury. Again, now it's obviously, again, an unfortunate one. All injuries are unfortunate ones. All injuries are unintentional and, accidents. but this one seems like it's more of a one-off. So again, if Brock Purdy continues to get hurt, we'd say the same thing about Brock Purdy. It's, can his body hold up in the NFL?
Yeah, I think the timing that Brock Purdy got hurt is more or less beneficial too, because of the fact. I mean, it sucked that he got hurt in a playoff game, which caused the Niners to probably lose that game like the most.
Oh, no, for
right?
Sure.
Yeah, for sure. Like I feel like if Purdy was playing and he was healthy, who knows? The Niners could have beaten Philly, maybe.
Yeah.
But I mean, think about if Purdy got that injury, like how Lance did, like week 2 of the season. That's a season-ending, injury there.
The season would have been over for him anyway.
Yeah. So I think timing is a good point. Like, yeah, he got hurt in the last game of the season, so he's able to get a full off season to get healthy. But it's just unfortunate for Lance. Like, I don't know if the body thing, but again, sometimes that just happens to players. Kind of reminds me of Kevin White for the Bears. He played 16 games over 4 seasons or something crazy like that. Like, Duke just could not stay healthy for whatever reason.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, there's a lot of examples throughout NFL history of guys that were great in college and they get to the NFL and for whatever reason their bodies just can't handle it. They just break down. Again, I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I'm definitely not great with people's physiology, so I can't determine why that seems to happen. But I mean, maybe that's just a case of what we're seeing here. A guy that definitely is uber talented and got the right mindset and leadership ability, but it maybe it's just an issue of his body can't handle it. Now, again, the 49ers could do things to accommodate for that. You could sit here and not run him anymore. You can keep him back there as a pure pocket passer, which I think it is a matter of that's something he's capable of doing. He's
right.
Again, from my understanding, from what Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers themselves have said, he's a very intelligent person. He can definitely get through the reads. But I guess what they were drafting him for was that extra element of his ability to run the ball. And if he can't do that, that kind of just, I guess, defeats a little bit of the purpose of trading up and taking him. Again, which also kind of opens up another can of worms. If that was the main function of what you're looking for, then why not just take Justin Fields? Right. Because we know Justin Fields ran a 4.3. We know Justin Fields was fast. We didn't, Lance didn't run a 40 time. Yeah. And you're comparing low D1 speed to
your point. I mean, Lance is tall too, but sometimes Justin Fields looked like he's built like a damn linebacker. Like Bro's coming out Ohio State, he was 6'3", 230, 240.
Yeah, dude was just
he's a solid guy. Like he's a solid dude. And I don't know how many rushing yards Lance had in college, but maybe it's because Ohio State did use Fields as more of a dual threat, but he only had I want to say 700 career rushing yards. He wasn't running a whole lot during college, and maybe they're I'm not sure how good of a sure rusher Fields is based off his college film, but just looking at the body comps, they're two different bodies. You know what I mean? They're both tall. One's built like a tank. Trey Lance is a little bit leaner.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't know his exact weight. I think he's 225. He's 6'5", 225. I want to say. Maybe 230. But like I said, I mean, you got a ligament issue in the ankle. You have a knee sprain, which again is another ligament issue. He did fracture a bone in his finger, which again, that's a bone issue, not really anything you can do about that. But I mean, these aren't soft muscle tissue injuries. They're ligament mostly injuries. And I actually did see that, which surprised me. I didn't realize this had happened. But he did have a meniscus surgery right before the 2020 season. He had a meniscus right before he got drafted too. So I mean. Again, it's just a bad string of injury luck that can be turned around and cleaned up. And then who knows, maybe he plays for the 49ers this year or maybe gets traded or whatever happens with him. And then he just never gets hurt again. So
Yeah, for sure. Well,
who knows?
History says that probably won't happen, but I mean, I hope it does. I mean, it kind of seems like his time, with the Niners is probably done after this season. Seeing rumors that if Darnold is listed as the second string, right, and you have Lance there at third, what's the point of even keeping him then?
Exactly. I mean, just again, in my opinion, I think it's the only thing that it's fair to criticize Lance on at this point because we haven't seen anything else, and it's a consistency to see and say, okay, he's gotten hurt 3 times in 8 games. That's not going to cut it.